Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your Midday Market Report for Cinco de Mayo, Friday, May 5th, 2023. The weekend is here. Kentucky Derby tomorrow. So much going on, whether it's the Derby, the horses dying, scratches, add-ins, 23 post spots tomorrow at 11:30 our time. Sean Alvarez, Mr. Smooth, 2 will be on to talk about that. But today it's our weekly trip with Matt Grissom at Grissom Tweets at CBS Insiders, CBSB Insiders, talking college baseball. And got to start with what's going on in Bama. Brandon Miller, college basketball, Bama. We know about what transpired there. Not one, but 2 NFL wide receivers from Bama with gambling issues suspended. One coming back this year with Calvin Ridley. And now the manager from Alabama Crimson Tide baseball team has been fired due to gambling allegations versus LSU. So let's see what Matt has to say. A lot going on, but we're here for winners. We're here for this weekend. A great slate of college baseball, but let's bring him in. The expert, the guru, the one and only Mr. Matt Grissom.
What's going on, Jeff? Happy Cinco de Mayo. I wish I had a margarita in my hand and sitting on a beach somewhere, but I'll take sitting here with you talking college baseball as a secondhand prize.
Yeah. Hey, I can't thank you enough. I love our Friday afternoons, and I'd like to say I wish we'd be starting with something other than a scandal or whatever we want to talk about here. You know, the fact of the matter is, backstage, I says, is there a witch hunt going on in Tuscaloosa? What the hell's going on? Basketball player, NFL players, now the baseball coach, gone due to gambling. Fill us in what you heard, what you know, what you think.
Man, I don't know. The biggest thing for me right now is what are the implications of this witch hunt for college baseball betting? You know, the first time that I feel like we're getting national notice of this college baseball, even being able to bet on it. I'm sure most sports bettors, they don't have that in their repertoire to bet. And the first time that we make national news about it, it's a controversy. So that leads me to believe that, one, ESPN was wrong for how they reported it, which, the news media these days, it's a race to who's first, not a race to who's right. And the second thing is this going to be a long-lasting black eye for college baseball betting in general? You're hitting the time where it's going to become more and more popular with the regionals coming up. You're going to have tougher matchups. You're going to have sharper lines. And now you've got sports books taking away being able to bet on Alabama, who's right there in the middle of the race for the field of 64. So I don't know. I think ultimately it's going to boil down to were any players involved. And if not, I hope this goes away. But Alabama, they turned it on last night. They beat number 5 Vanderbilt amidst all this controversy. They whooped Vanderbilt 11-2. So you love to see it. You love to see the players rally around with after losing their head coach. It's just great for the sport, all things aside. But moving on, I hope that Alabama can get put back on some betting boards. They're going to be live in the SEC tournament, which is played down in Hoover. I would love to be able to bet on them, but this whole story in general was just not a good look for college baseball.
As I stated backstage, I'm going to start to wonder, and I hate all the TikToks. I hate all the narratives of people looking for clicks that talk about these games being rigged, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL. They bring up one little point, one dropped pass, one Olay defense in NBA to a soft goal in the NHL, and rigged. Listen, when I was young in the 80s, that was the talk. Oh, this is rigged, that's rigged. And what I tell people now, a lot older, and I'll even tell people, I'll be 57 this year. If you are telling me these games are rigged and scripted, just get the hell off social media. Just mute yourself, because it's physically impossible. Are there bad apples? Yes. I mean, look at the NBA ref with Donaghy. He did federal time. Are there, as it happened in college sports, it happened right down the road at Chestnut Hill with BC. There are bad apples. If you watch the college basketball March Madness this year and just the facial expressions of Brandon Miller, the first game, he didn't even score. So I'm not saying out there, okay? But don't try to black eye or tarnish the sports world by saying that these games are rigged and there's all this funny business going on.
Yeah, and it's not. It's because the sports books are partnering with these leagues. I feel like that's what's charging this whole, oh, it's rigged, Vegas knows. But Las Vegas, I say Las Vegas, a sports book is what caused Brad Bohannon to get fired, because he was doing something unethical and illegal per his contract. So sports betting is good. Did he know that LSU had a strong advantage to win that game? And did he call a friend and say, place a big bet on LSU? Yeah. You know what? Most college baseball bettors did, because Paul Skeens was throwing for LSU, who's got the best ERA in the country. He's 8-1 as a starter, and they're the number one team in baseball. So, yeah, minus 235 is a bargain price, and everyone was betting them. I'm not real sure, other than the fact that maybe that sports book didn't get a lot of action on college baseball, and that's what suddenly triggered this. But anybody who follows this stuff knows that Paul Skeens is the heavy favorite. And, yeah, Alabama may have scratched Luke Holman, who's their ace, late, and there was a small advantage there. But this line still wasn't going to go from 235 to, 400. I mean, they were too evenly matched to be that drastic of a change. So when the news with Luke Holman not playing came out, which was an hour before the game started, the sports books had the same information that all of us bettors do, and they could have adjusted the line or stopped taking bets. They didn't, and it led to this. And then what pisses me off even more is the ESPN came out and said, we've got a story about this, but we don't know anything about it. So just watch. I mean, this is no different than me saying an hour before the game that the White Sox are not throwing Dylan Cease, who's their ace. They change of plans. They're not going to. You can get the other team plus money. Go bet it. It happens every single day. You've watched NFL games where a wide receiver is scratched right before kickoff. I mean, it happens. It's a race to information, and sometimes the book loses. But you know what the book can do? They can raise the price or take it off the board, not take the bet. So it's really unfortunate that it's happened, and I hate it for college baseball betting in general.
And it's comical. Go to game one, Boston and the 76ers. The line was 6.5, 7. Embiid's out. It's 10, 10.5, 11. Harden scores 45. 76ers win. Game two, Embiid's in, and the Celtics blow him out. So again, if you're open for business, this is what you do. We talk, you're good friends. I'm good friends with Jeffrey Benson at the Circa. We're open for business to take bets, period. Not to put limits on Matt Grissom, Jeff Dawson, Dave Sharapan, or whoever. We're here. That's what we're here for. And you nailed it perfectly. You know, how many times do people run to the window because James Harden's out, Embiid's out, the line shifts. Tatum is now out. The Celtics go from -5 to -1. And everyone goes, runs, plays the other sides. Jaylen Brown scores 48, and the Celtics win by double digits.
Yeah. And it's fine that it caused Brad Bohannon to get fired, because that's obviously something to do with his contract that he is not allowed to do, which, you know, you shouldn't be allowed to bet against your own team. But that has nothing to do with the rest of the world betting Alabama baseball. So the fact that it's caused it to be taken off the board for everyone when there wasn't anything suspicious going on, like a team throwing a game. And if anything, Alabama fought like hell to come back in that game. They were down 8-1 or 8-2. And the game final was 8-6. Alabama scored 4 runs in the ninth, which ultimately made me lose my under. But, you know, Alabama still fought. So the fact that you would accuse a team of throwing the game based on this information, it's untrue. Anybody that watched the game saw that Alabama was trying to win that game. LSU was just the better team, and a lot of people were betting LSU. And that's really all I have to say about it.
Well, I have to give you credit, because as soon as I see LSU and as soon as I see the -250, whatever, I think of Paul Skeens. I said, the man's on the mound, therefore it's an autoplay. And the fact of the matter is now this scandal. So it is kind of comical. So I'll go from that to give us the weekend recap of last week. Any big upsets, any favorites coming through? What'd you see last weekend, and how'd you make out?
Well, I think the biggest surprise was that South Carolina got beat in a series against Auburn, who just hasn't been very good this year. Outside of that, you had Arkansas sweep Texas A&M. You think maybe they're figuring it back out, and then they lose a midweek game to Lipscomb down in Little Rock. So it's just hit or miss right now. I think teams are still just all dealing with injuries. They're dealing with trying to figure out the missing link for their pitching rotations. LSU, the number 1 team in the country, they still don't have their second and third day starters figured out. Their bullpen's not very good. Like I just said, they almost gave up the lead against Alabama last weekend. Overall, I think teams are glad to be done with midweeks. I think a lot of teams, I know Arkansas is, they're going to stop playing midweek games now, which really helps when you can rest your pitchers, because that was part of Arkansas's problem, is we didn't have any pitchers left. And I tweeted out earlier, I think Arkansas is down 9 guys to injury right now, or have been throughout the season. And so when 4 of those are pitchers, and you've got to play a midweek game and then get ready for an SEC series, you're not throwing anybody in that midweek game that's going to pitch for you that weekend, not at any length anyways. So it really puts you in a bind when you're already short stacked at pitcher, and then you have to throw 3 or 4 guys. You're going to get beat by a team like Lipscomb. And Dave Van Horn would never admit it, but after we tied it up in the 8th, I think, and had to switch pitchers for the 9th and took it in the extra innings, I don't think he wanted the game to end. He wasn't trying to throw another pitcher. And outside of a position player, we didn't have anybody left. So glad to be done with midweeks, glad to be, 1 week closer to the end of the season. It's going to be a tough road, but I think we can make some money down the stretch.
Before we get into the this weekend's games and slates, I always ask you a couple things here. You talked about LSU being number 1. We've got, the Campbell Camels, we got Wake Forest, we got UConn, we got a few others in our portfolio as we get closer to the end of the regular season. Anyone moving up the ranks or anyone sliding down the ranks?
LSU at 4-1 just still isn't a play for me. I'm hoping they take an early exit to the SEC tournament, and you can maybe get them 5 or 6-1. I think ultimately, if they can get their pitching rotation figured out, they may be a play later on. It just all depends on the super regional. No number 1 team has won it all since Miami did it in 99. outside of that, I think Wake Forest is still a good play at 10-1. They should be in the ballpark with LSU in that 5 to 6-1 range. And you could see our friends at Circa who have it more accurately priced. South Carolina, another good team. If they could just get their pitching, after they swept Florida, I thought that South Carolina was probably the best team in the SEC. And then they had a no-show last weekend against Auburn and proved me wrong. So I don't know. It's still kind of hit or miss with South Carolina. Tennessee at 15-1, finally coming along. And Florida at 12-1. You could have gotten it at a better price, but I think right now, if you made me bet 5 teams that were going to win it all or that had a legitimate shot, I would say it's LSU, Wake Forest, South Carolina, Florida, or Tennessee. And I know that's SEC heavy, but I think those are the 5 teams that have the studs that could get you there to the finish line.
Our weekly UConn update. How'd they do last week?
I think I bet them one game, and I want to say they lost. I should have seen this coming, but I don't have anything pulled up in front of me. But they still look like one of those dark horse candidates out there. They had Villanova, I think, last weekend. And no, it was a cancellation. That's what it was. They were going for the sweep, and they canceled against Villanova. But they play Seton Hall this weekend. Seton Hall is sitting at 25-19, 7-5 in the Big East. They should probably handle them. I think UConn is the superior team. Down the stretch, I think UConn's going to have a very favorable schedule the rest of the way. They've got Butler and Creighton and a couple of midweeks against Long Island and Rhode Island. So we'll see. The Huskies could make some noise, as I touched on last weekend. They're a team that they seem to always kind of be in the conversation of being able to make a splash in the regional. They're one of those teams that a lot of people don't pay attention to, so they could sneak up on you.
Well, there was a slippage, I'd like to say, on DraftKings. I think Sean was on with us, and he talked about the Circa price and then the Westgate price. And I think the actual DraftKings price was like plus 20,000. They were just so far off. So let's just say when I've got the future, there was a pause, and they had to review it at the risk room. They allowed it, but they had to review it at the risk room. So I found that one comical. Last question. How's Coastal Carolina been doing?
Coastal, they're still one of my favorite teams because they hit the ball so well. I think they could beat anybody in a 3-game series. They did lose one game, I think, to Charlotte this past weekend, which, at this point of the season, you've really got to kind of hone in on the games that you want to win. They lost midweek to Charlotte. They lost 1 of 3 to Louisiana Lafayette last weekend. Their pitching is still a question mark for me. I think they could make some noise in the postseason, but ultimately pitching is who travels. And if you've got a good solid rotation, that's the team that you're probably going to be better off backing in a super regional. The regional can be a little bit more of a wild card because it's a double elimination where 1 plays 4 and then 2 plays 3, and then the winners play each other, the losers play each other. So you could usually get by if you're the 1 seed. You could get by with throwing a guy that is not your ace against the 4 seed. But in the 2 versus 3 matchup, you kind of are at a disadvantage because you do need that one. You throw your ace, which means you're playing the 1 seed most likely, who still has their ace to throw. Now, in a super regional, that's your typical 3-game series. So you've got, the best 2 out of 3. So it's your typical Friday starter and then Saturday starter, Sunday starter, on and so forth. But Coastal, if they can get their pitching figured out, I feel like they're a team to back, especially if they've got home field advantage where they're hosting a regional.
Last question. The Yukons, the Campbells, the Coastal Carolinas, when it gets time, regular season's over, the conference play for the championship, do you think lesser of these guys because they haven't played an SEC type schedule? Or the proof's in the pudding as the further these guys go, you're going to see, as I always say about UConn, they just don't have the length in the pitch. And yeah, they can score with these teams, but when they're going to their non-Friday starters and they're in game 3 of a must win and they're looking back at the bullpen and they're like, holy crap, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, that's kind of where I like to use the RPI because that really gives you a grander scale. It's constantly changing of the quality of opponents that a team has played. But yeah, I mean, Coastal Carolina, Campbell, they may get a midweek win over a Power 5 school, but it's a whole different ballgame when you're talking about winning a series. And I think ultimately the cream does rise to the top, and you're gonna see a team more often than not get beat. And unfortunately for Campbell, they're such a small school. I think their baseball stadium may hold like 1,500 people, so they're probably not going to be able to host. They're going to get put again with like a Wake Forest or somebody there locally, which is just an atrocious draw for them. I mean, they got Tennessee last year, who had their remarkable run. If they get placed in Wake Forest Regional, that's going to be brutal for the Camels.
I'm looking at this weekend schedule. The locals, BC at Wake Forest, opened at minus 265 on Wager Talk. I'm seeing it as high as 500 on Bet Online. We'll go to Circa right now. They do not have it. Let me see. Superbook, minus 420 there. LSU, Auburn. LSU, a big-time favorite, minus 270. Florida against A&M. Florida, a short price, minus as low as 135. Your Arkansas Razorbacks at Mississippi State, looking at around minus 180. Let me see. South Carolina at Kentucky, good number there, minus 145, minus 150. I ask you every week, is Louisville back? Well, they're minus 125. Clemson is this week. The Vols at Georgia, minus 195. And at 5 o'clock, NC State, Notre Dame. I'm seeing NC State as high as minus 130.
Yeah, so starting with your first one with Wake Forest, I think Boston College couldn't be facing who would be my number one team in the country at a worse time. I think Boston College is going to be without Joe Vetrano, their center fielder, this weekend. Wake Forest is a wagon right now. They've just switched back to starting Rhett Lauder on the Friday roll instead of Sean Sullivan, who, my infatuation with Wake Forest pitching staff is, I mean, all these guys are sub-3 ERAs. You've got Rhett Lauder today going. I think he's a 1.67. It's obviously too high of a price to lay straight up, but I parlayed them on DraftKings with LSU and Paul Skeens, who's also a big favorite. It's basically just back in the elite pitchers. You've got two pitchers that are both sub-2 ERAs, and they give you length in the game. They'll go 7-8 innings sometimes. And I think when you're looking at it as a whole, you could trust these teams to get it done with Paul Skeens and Rhett Lauder. I think it was minus 137 in that parlay, and I ended up making it a 2-unit play.
Well, that's pretty. You got two studs on the mound, both on one Wake Forest home, LSU on the road there. I like where you're thinking there. What else you got?
I threw together a little mid-major parlay. I did Campbell, Dallas Baptist, and Coastal Carolina. They're all south of minus 200, but you parlayed them together and you get a little nice plus price. I think it was plus 115 on DraftKings. Those are three teams that I really feel like as the season closes, they've got to get those statement wins that, the committee doesn't bat an eye over. You can't really afford to start losing conference games this late in the season, especially when you don't play in a very tough conference. So I think all three of those teams need to win. Other than that, I've got South Carolina minus 135. They're coming off getting beat by Auburn. I don't think that they have a repeat performance. Will Sanders is going tonight for South Carolina. He always bounces back. I feel like when he has a bad outing, he follows it up with a good one. So I laid it with South Carolina minus 135, and I went back to the well with Arkansas. They've finally gotten Brady Tygart back, who's the best closer, in my opinion, in the country. He has a nasty curveball. They're starting Hagen Smith tonight, who is our best pitcher on the staff, hands down. He's got a sub-3 ERA. He's a lefty. I think Mississippi State is down so bad this year. I think Mississippi State will get a win or two, but I just don't see it happening tonight. So I laid the minus 180 on Arkansas. I feel like you're going to see Hagen Smith. You're going to see Brady Tygart in this game. And then Stanford, another game where we're backing a stud pitcher. You've got Quinn Matthews going. Again, another guy that's sub-3 ERA. I think he's 8-1 as a starter this season. He's as solid as they come. He's the best pitcher in the Pac-12. He's got experience. Stanford's really pushing to be a national seed right now. This is not one that they're going to drop. And I thought the price at minus 150 was just too short. And then lastly, I went back to the Florida Gators in honor of Q, my co-host, that this price is way too short at minus 135. I'm not real sure why they are minus 135 against Texas A&M. I think A&M's probably going to throw Nathan Detmer as long as he's not hurt. I know he had some pain in his arm and ended up getting pulled real early last weekend against in their series against Arkansas. But I think Brandon Sproat, this combination of Riopelle and Wyatt Langford, Jack Caglione, this batting order is just too tough. It's a lot better than Arkansas's batting order, and Arkansas just swept A&M last weekend. So I could definitely see Florida doing it, albeit it's on the road. I still think Florida could get the sweep against A&M this weekend.
How many more weeks are left in the regular season?
I think we've got 3 more weeks.
My daughter came home.
Counting this one, you've got 3, and then the weekend of the 26th is when conference tournaments start.
Reason I asked is that my youngest, Kylie, came home today. She finished her first year at UConn, so I assumed all the spring sports teams are staying up. The campus will be wide open for them, so they still have a couple more weeks of conference play.
Yes, sir.
The scroll has been going the whole time, Matt. Everyone knows they can follow you at Grissom Tweets. They can go to CBSB Insiders. You and Q do an amazing work there and job. What I like to do here is just throw you a soft lollipop curveball to give everyone the opportunity from the horse's mouth to tell them where they can find all your stuff.
Go check out collegebaseballinsiders.com. I've been putting together this series preview card as much as I can. I'm determined to find some quantifiable data to back how we bet these teams. I've added it this week. We've added the team pitching and team hitting category, as well as we still do the impact pitchers and hitters for each team. Looking at their record versus RPI top 25, you could compare team to team that way. We're trying to help you not only, win some money with our bets, but we're trying to provide you information. So if you want to handicap this stuff, you're on your own, you've got the resource readily available to do it. It's all for free. I love doing it. I love to bet college baseball. It's something I'm very passionate about. And as always, I appreciate you giving me this plug. I love being on with you. I feel like I always learn something new and try to get better every day.
Well, we can't thank you enough. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and diehard college sports fan, whether it's football, whether it's basketball and baseball. And I don't think baseball gets enough coverage, and someone like yourself, someone like you, that digs in deep, digs into the batter's box, takes the high heater once in a while, but gets back up and keeps plugging away. You're giving us an opportunity to see this work, and it's only going to get big and bigger, man.
Yep, I completely agree. It's a roller coaster ride, but it's a fun one. Now I'm 152 and 130 on the year, and my cumulative right now I'm up 17.69 units. So all in all, I mean, I may get taken to the woodshed week in and week out, but I usually bounce back and end up plus money. So if you're following along, I hope that I can at least provide some information, if not some winning bets as well.
We can't thank you enough. Go follow Matt at Grissom Tweets, at CBSB Insiders, his regular spot here at 2 o'clock on Fridays, as always. Go enjoy the Kentucky Derby. Best of luck there and the rest of the action. And we will catch up with you real soon. How's that?
Sounds good, Jeff.
The one and only Matt Grissom at Grissom Tweets. Go follow him. Go follow me at EC Sports Invest. In about 13 to 15, 18 minutes, Andrew McGinnis at Wager Talk at McGinnis Picks. We'll be talking NHL and more. So stay tuned.